How many times have you heard that this will be the Leafs' year? How many mornings have you woken up checking the news, hoping that this time it will be different? How many nights have you gone to bed after yet another early playoff exit, promising yourself you wouldn't get emotionally involved next season? Well then, blue and white fan, the time has come for Brad Treliving to prove whether he really has what it takes to break this decades-long curse. Because this time, we're not talking about cosmetic adjustments. We're not talking about depth contracts or betting on young prospects. We're talking about a full-on revolution in this team's DNA. And when I say revolution, I mean it. Because after decades of empty promises, of this is our year, of frustrated expectations, it's time for Brad Treliving to put his money where his mouth is. Time to prove he's learned from past mistakes and won't repeat the same failed formulas we've seen for so long in Toronto. To grasp the scale of what's happening now, we need to go back. Since 1967, the Maple Leafs have become synonymous with wasted potential. 58 years. 58 years since this organization showed it knew what it takes to reach the top. Remember the trade that brought Matt Sundin from Quebec? At the time, it felt like we'd finally found a leader to take us to the promised land. Sundin gave everything he had, played with heart, but it wasn't enough. Remember the epic arrival of John Tavares as a free agent? The prodigal son coming home, leaving the Islanders to fulfill a childhood dream of playing for the Leafs. The whole city buzzed, expectations soared. But again, it wasn't enough. Then came Austin Matthews, the dream franchise player, the kid from Phoenix who fell in love with hockey watching the Leafs. The 2016 still draft, playing at a high level, first overall pick, represents a short goals his first NHL game. If that wasn't a sign of destiny, what was? But here we are, 8 seasons later, still chasing that Stanley Cup that feels more like a desert mirage than a reachable goal. Every move was supposed to be the missing puzzle piece. Every season started with renewed hope. Every playoff ended with that same empty feeling in your gut, because the problem was never talent. The Leafs always had more than enough talent. The problem was always character, mentality, the ability to raise their level when everything's on the line. But now there's something different in the air in Toronto. Craig Berube is in charge, and he's not just another coach. He's the man who took the St. Louis Blues in January 2019, a team in dead last, and turned them into Stanley Cup champions just 5 months later. A coach who doesn't tolerate half measures, who demands commitment, who turns talented players into warriors ready to bleed for the crest when the pressure hits. And Brad Treliving knows that. He knows Berube won't accept the same soft roster that crumbled so many times before. He knows he needs to deliver players who don't just score when it's easy, but who show up when the game turns violent, when refs pocket their whistles, when every shift could decide a series. If you're like me, waking up every day hoping today is the day the news breaks that changes everything, then you need to be here with us. Because while other channels settle for recycling the same surface-level headlines everyone's already seen, we go deep behind the scenes, into whispered conversations in the corridors of Scotiabank Arena, into the deals taking shape away from the traditional media spotlight. Smash the like button now if you want to be part of a community that doesn't accept mediocrity, that isn't satisfied with almost, that demands excellence from this organization. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because in the coming days and weeks, moves will be made, and you can't afford to miss a single detail, a single insider tip that could completely shift our view of this team's future. We are thousands of fans united by the same passion, the same frustration, the same unshakable hope that one day we'll celebrate together. And when that day comes, we'll be right here to share that joy. Brad Treliving isn't messing around this time. Sources close to the organization, people with direct access to internal front office discussions, confirm that the Leafs general manager is actively searching for reinforcements down the middle. And when I say actively, I mean daily phone calls, late-night Zoom meetings, serious talks with agents and other general managers. But here's the crucial detail that makes all the difference. We're not talking about washed-up veterans looking for one last contract. We're not talking about gambles on young prospects who might or might not pan out someday. We're talking about established players, proven veterans who know exactly what playoff pressure feels like, who've been to the fire and come out stronger on the other side. The current picture is crystal clear for anyone who's paying attention. Even with Austin Matthews locked in as the undisputed franchise cornerstone, even with a contract extension that made him the highest paid player in NHL history, even with the potential for John Tavares to re-sign under a team-friendly cap hit, Brad Treliving knows there's still something fundamentally missing from this roster. It's toughness when the game gets ugly. It's poise in crunch time moments when one play can define an entire season. It's a player who doesn't disappear into the boards when things get rough in the playoffs, when the hits are heavier and the refs let more go. It's vocal leadership in the locker room. Someone who will call out the team when effort dips, who will hold teammates accountable when commitment starts to fade. And look, the options on the table right now are enough to make any hockey-savvy fan drool. Each name represents a different philosophy, a distinct approach to solving this team's chronic issues. Steven Stamkos, captain of the Tampa Bay Lightning for 8 seasons, a player the Leafs have coveted for nearly a full decade. Ever since 2016, when he was available as a free agent, Toronto dreamed of bringing him home. Now, at 35 years old, after a disappointing season in Nashville, he might finally be within reach. Stamkos is no longer the 50-goal sniper we once knew, but he's someone who's lifted the Stanley Cup twice and knows exactly what it takes to win at the highest level. Jared McCann, the one Kyle Dubas let slip away during the expansion draft, a decision that still haunts the dreams of any fan who understands the value of a complete center. 22 goals last season with Seattle, a player who once at the 40-goal mark, kills penalties, plays on special teams, and at just 29 years old, is right in the prime of his career. McCann represents everything the Leafs lost when they chose to protect Justin Hall in that draft. McCann and Shen, a player Craig Berube knows, as well as any coach knows on his own. It was Berube who helped mold Shen in St. Louis, turning him from a talented youngster into a complete leader. Shen knows exactly what Barubi expects, understands the system inside and out, and at 33, still has 3 years left on a very team-friendly contract. Charlie Coyle, a player who could bring exactly the physical presence and versatility the Leafs are missing down the middle. Standing at 6'3", nearly 220 pounds, capable of playing center or wing, contributing offensively without neglecting defensive duties. Colorado might be open to moving him after some tension behind the scenes with Nathan MacKinnon and Jean-Gabriel Pageau, the kind of irritating player every opposing fan hates still playing at a high level, who every team wants on their side when the playoffs begin. 60% in faceoffs, 140 hits last season, plays on the penalty kill, never shies away from the dirty work, and knows the pressure of the Canadian market from his years in Ottawa. This is where things get truly interesting. And it's exactly here where you understand why this channel is different from all the others. Because everyone talks about trades after they happen. Everyone analyzes the stats after the contracts are signed. But almost no one explains what really happens in the meeting rooms, in the late-night phone calls, in the negotiations that shape the future of a franchise. Let's start with Steven Stamkos, because the situation is more complex than it seems on the surface. Stamkos has a no-trade clause in his contract, which means he has full power to veto any deal he doesn't like. Nashville knows this, every interested team knows this, and Stamkos himself obviously knows it. But there's an emotional factor that can make all the difference in the world: John Tavares. The two aren't just familiar faces from the NHL circuit. They've been close friends for years. Since their junior hockey days, they walk similar paths as young superstars burdened with massive expectations. Tavares knows exactly what it feels like to be the guy expected to save a franchise, and Stamkos went through the same thing in Tampa Bay. Just imagine the conversation between them. "Steven, it's time to chase the dream you've always had since you were a kid. Come to Toronto. Let's go after that Stanley Cup together. Let's write our names into the city's history." And there's another detail few people know. Stamkos grew up cheering for the Leafs. It's not a media narrative. It's not PR spin. It's real. He was genuinely a fan of the team as a kid, before getting drafted by Tampa Bay. The chance to play for his childhood dream team, at age 35, could be exactly the kind of motivation that pushes a player to accept a trade, even from a comfortable situation. The case of Jared McCann represents something much deeper and more painful for Leafs fans. He's living proof of how bad decisions can haunt a franchise for years. Kyle Dubas had to protect one player during the Seattle expansion draft. There were two main options: Justin Hall, a limited defenseman who was never going to be more than a third-pair guy, or Jared McCann, a versatile 25-year-old center with room to grow. Dubas chose to protect Hall. Seattle picked McCann. The result? Hall left Toronto the following year as a free agent and faded into NHL irrelevance. McCann became one of the most consistent playing at a high level, scoring over 20 goals per season, contributing on special teams, and becoming a key part of the Seattle Kraken. It was a costly decision, and one that Brad Treliving now has a real chance to correct. McCann has a no-trade clause for 10 teams, but sources close to the player suggest Toronto is likely not on that list. On the contrary, there's reported mutual interest that could greatly ease negotiations. Seattle is in a strange spot, unsure whether to compete now or shift toward a future rebuild. And with McCann under contract for 2 more seasons, he's exactly the type of asset they might be willing to move for the right package. Brayden Schen's situation is even more intriguing because it goes far beyond just numbers on a page. Craig Berube isn't just another coach to Shen. During their time in St. Louis, Barubi became a father figure in the player's development. He didn't just shape Shen technically, he molded him mentally, transforming him from a talented but inconsistent player into a complete and reliable leader. When Barubi took over the Blues mid-season in 2018-19, the team was dead last in the league. Shen was going through a tough stretch, questioning whether he truly had what it took to be an elite NHL player. Barubi believed in him, gave him high responsibility roles, and the result? Shen became a crucial piece of the Blues' Stanley Cup win, playing in all situations and serving as a vocal leader in the locker room. There's another factor few consider. His brother, Luke Shen, already played in Toronto, spending 2 seasons with the Leafs between 2021 and 2023. Brayden knows exactly what to expect from the Canadian media pressure, the fan passion, the intensity of playing in the hockey capital of the world. Luke may have even passed along some valuable advice on how to handle it all, quietly preparing the ground for a potential move. St. Louis is in a complicated position. They're not bad enough to justify a full rebuild, but they're not good enough to contend for a Stanley Cup anytime soon. At 33, Brayden Shen might not fit into their long-term plans, especially if interesting offers come along that could help reshape the roster. Charlie Coyle represents a different kind of opportunity. Riskier, but potentially very rewarding. Colorado is in serious salary cap trouble, with only $1.2 million in space for next year, and needs to make moves to keep its core intact. Coyle has just 1 year left on his deal, which lowers the risk for any interested team, but also makes him a 1-year rental. Reports of tension between Coyle and Nathan MacKinnon weren't exaggerated. There are real personality and playstyle differences that have created friction in the locker room. MacKinnon is intense, demanding, and quick to hold teammates accountable when things go sideways. Coyle is quieter, prefers to lead by example, and avoids confrontation. That dynamic didn't work well in Colorado, but it could suit Toronto better, where Coyle might find an environment more aligned with his leadership style. Jean-Gabriel Pageau's situation might be the most intriguing of them all, because it could involve more than just one player. The New York Islanders are in a tough spot. After yet another disappointing season, they need to make major changes. Both Pageau and Noah Dobson have come up in trade discussions. Now imagine the possibility. Pageau and Dobson in a blockbuster deal that solves 2 of Toronto's biggest issues at once. A veteran center who knows how to play playoff hockey, and a young defenseman with top-pair potential. It's exactly the kind of bold move that can define an era, the kind of deal that separates ordinary general managers from visionary ones. Pageau knows exactly what it's like to play under the weight of Canadian media pressure from his years in Ottawa. He understands what it means to play with sky-high expectations, to face passionate fans who demand results night in and night out. That kind of experience could be priceless in a Leafs locker room that has historically struggled in high-pressure moments. Now, let's be completely realistic and honest about what each of these potential trades would mean for the immediate and long-term future of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Because dreaming about big moves means nothing if we don't understand how they actually fit into the larger puzzle Craig Berube is trying to piece together. Steven Stamkos at age 35 is obviously no longer the dominant 40-goal scorer he was a decade ago. But that doesn't mean he wouldn't bring tremendous value to a team that desperately needs veteran leadership and big game experience. 27 goals last season with Nashville proves he still has gas in the tank, still has meaningful offensive production left. But Stamkos' real value to the Leafs wouldn't just show up on the score sheet. It would be in the locker room, guiding younger players through the emotional highs and lows of a long season, using his experience as a 2-time Stanley Cup champion to prepare the team for the moments that matter most. Imagine Stamkos mentoring Austin Matthews on handling the pressure of being a franchise player, or advising William Nylander on how to stay consistent across an entire season. Tactically, Stamkos would be a perfect fit in Craig Berube's system. He can play center if needed, but would likely be more effective on the right wing of the second line, where his power play expertise would be vital. The Leafs have struggled with their second unit on the power play in recent years. Stamkos could fix that on day one. The salary cap would be a real challenge. Stamkos earns $8 million per year for the next 3 seasons, which will require significant creativity from Treliving to make the numbers work. It would likely require Nashville to retain salary, or for the Leafs to include problematic contracts in the deal to balance the books. Jared McCann would represent the most immediate and significant impact in terms of offensive production and tactical versatility. At 29 years old, he's right in the prime of his career. Experienced enough to be reliable, but young enough to be a long-term piece. 22 goals last season with Seattle. He's hit the 40-goal mark in previous years. Kills penalties, plays on the power play, and can line up at center or on the wing. McCann would be exactly the second-line center the Leafs have been searching for years. He will allow John Tavares to slide down to the third line, creating a terrifying depth down the middle that few teams in the league could match. Matthews on the first line, McCann on the second, Tavares on the third, and there'd still be room for David Kampf or Scott Laughton on the fourth. Defensively, McCann is far more reliable than most offensive-minded centers in the league. He's not just a goal scorer. He's a complete player who understands two-way responsibility and doesn't sacrifice defense for points. Craig Berube values that mentality enormously, and McCann would fit perfectly into the coach's philosophy. The big issue would be the cost of the trade. Seattle won't give up McCann for free, especially knowing that Toronto is desperate for that position. It would likely require a package, including a first-round pick, a high-end prospect, and possibly a roster player to balance salaries. McCann and Shen represents the perfect balance between offensive skill and defensive grit. Exactly the kind of player Craig Berube loves to work with. 50 points last season may not seem spectacular, but consider the context. Shen played all 82 games, which is impressive given his physical style. 193 hits, 55 blocked shots, 52% in the faceoff circle. These numbers show a player who, despite still playing at a high level, Shen shows up in tough moments, isn't afraid of dirty work, throws hits when needed but never loses sight of the game. At 33 years old, he still has 3 years remaining on a very team-friendly $6.5 million per year contract, a near bargain in today's NHL. His familiarity with Craig Berube would be a huge advantage. Shen wouldn't need time to adapt to the system, wouldn't need to learn a new philosophy. He could arrive in Toronto and make an immediate impact, crucial for a team clearly in win-now mode. The Leafs' second power play unit will be transformed with Shen's arrival. He has the experience and ability to quarterback a unit, but also isn't afraid to stand in front of the net and do the dirty work that often decides special team success. Charlie Coyle would be a different kind of gamble, riskier, but potentially very valuable. Standing 6'3" and nearly 220 pounds, he brings exactly the physical presence the Leafs are missing down the middle. But it's not just brute size. Coyle knows how to use his body intelligently, shielding the puck, winning board battles, creating space for smaller line mates. 17 goals last season, split between Boston and Colorado, isn't an eye-popping number. But remember, Coyle arrived in Colorado mid-season and had to adapt to a completely different system. On top of that, he contributes on special teams, both power play and penalty kill, adding tremendous versatility to the lineup. The fact that he has just 1 year left on his contract is both a pro and a con. A pro because it reduces the financial risk. The Leafs could try the fit with no long-term commitment. A con because if the fit is great, they'd need to move fast and negotiate an extension and avoid losing him in free agency. The reported friction with Nathan MacKinnon in Colorado may have been exaggerated by the media, but it shows how personality clashes can arise in high-pressure locker rooms. In Toronto, with more measured leaders like Matthews and Tavares, Coyle might find a better environment for his quieter leadership style. Jean-Gabriel Pageau may be the most intriguing option of all, not just for what he brings individually, but for the potential to be part of a larger trade that could solve multiple Leafs problems at once. 42 points last season may not wow anyone, but the face-off numbers do. 60% efficiency, which is elite in today's NHL. 140 hits last season show a player unafraid of physical contact. Someone who understands that playoff hockey is a different game. Pago is exactly the kind of pesky center every opposing fan hates, but every coach wants on their team come spring. His experience in Ottawa would be invaluable for handling Canadian media pressure. Pago knows what it's like to play under massive expectations and deal with passionate fans who demand results every night. That experience could be crucial for a Leafs locker room that's historically struggled in high-pressure situations. But the real prize would be if the Islanders were willing to include Noah Dobson in a bigger deal. Dobson is exactly the type of defenseman the Leafs need, young, talented, with top pairing potential, but not yet at his peak. A trade involving Pago and Dobson for a package, including Morgan Reilly and other pieces, to completely reshape the team structure. But beyond all the tactical and financial considerations, there's an element that can't be quantified, and that might be the most important of all. The emotional and cultural impact that each of these additions could have on a locker room and the overall team mentality. The Toronto Maple Leafs have a chronic identity issue. For decades, they've been seen as a skilled but soft team. One that plays beautiful hockey in the regular season, but fades when playoff pressure ramps up. That reputation didn't come out of nowhere. It was built through painful eliminations, disappointing performances in key moments, and players who vanished when the team needed them most. Bringing in veterans like Stamkos or Shen wouldn't just be about adding points. It would be about changing the culture. Having respected voices in a room who can demand commitment when things get tough. Players who walk through the fire of the playoffs and come out stronger on the other side have a moral authority that can't be taught or faked. McCann represents something different but equally valuable. The chance to correct a historic mistake while adding a player in his prime. For a fan base scarred by decades of questionable front office decisions, seeing Treliving actively right past wrongs will be a powerful signal that this administration is different. The psychological element can't be underestimated. When players see that the organization is willing to make real sacrifices to improve the team, when they know they're not alone in pursuit of excellence, it creates a domino effect that can transform a locker room's entire mentality. The big question haunting every Leafs fan right now is simple, but terrifying. Does Brad Treliving truly have the guts to make the trade that could change everything? Because it's one thing to talk about changing the culture, about adding veterans, about solving chronic issues. It's something else entirely to actually pull the trigger on a deal that could define his legacy as a general manager. Let's be honest about the situation. Doing the same thing and expecting different results, that's the textbook definition of insanity. And Leafs fans have been insane for far too long. They've lived through too many cycles of hope and heartbreak, believed in too many promises that never came true. Treliving knows he doesn't have the luxury of time. Austin Matthews is in his prime, but that won't last forever. William Nylander just signed an extension, but contracts can be traded. Mitch Marner could leave as a free agent after next season if he doesn't re-sign. The window is open now, but windows close fast in today's NHL. The most frustrating part is knowing that the resources are there. The talent is there. The foundation is there. But for some inexplicable reason, this team keeps stumbling over the same obstacles, despite still playing at a high level, letting opportunities represent the fingers like sand. So tell me in the comments, and be brutally honest, which of these 5 players do you think will be the perfect fit to solve the Leafs' problems? And more importantly, do you truly believe Brad Treliving has the courage and creativity to make a truly impactful trade? Or are we in for yet another season of almost another year of next time will be different? Because one thing I can promise all of you watching, if nothing changes drastically this summer, if Treliving doesn't have the guts to make bold moves, the result will be exactly the same as always. And most passionate fan base in the world deserves far more than that. The raw, harsh truth is that we've reached a fork in the road for this franchise. Either Brad Treliving proves that he's learned from the mistakes of his predecessors and makes the necessary changes to break this decades-old curse, or he becomes just another name on the long list of general managers who promised change and delivered more of the same. And you, the fans who wake up every day with renewed hope, who pour your emotion, time, and money into this team, You deserve to know whether this front office truly has what it takes to take the Leafs to the next level. No more empty promises. No more rebuilding process. No more next year will be different. It's time for real results. And stay tuned, because over the next 48 hours, we're going even deeper into this story that could define the future of the Toronto Maple Leafs. We have exclusive information from sources who prefer to remain anonymous but have direct access to front office discussions about which player the Leafs are really prioritizing in trade talks. And you won't believe what we've uncovered about the conversations already happening behind the scenes. There's a GM who's already made calls. There's an agent who's already spoken to Treliving. There's a player who's already shown interest in wearing the blue and white. The next few days could be historic for this organization. We're also preparing a full breakdown of Brad Treliving's real budget, which contracts he's willing to move, which prospects are being included in trade packages, and what the real timeline is for these negotiations. Information no other channel has. Details that could completely reshape how you view what's coming. If you don't want to miss a single second of this saga that could define an era in Leafs history, hit the notification bell right now. Because when the trades start heating up, when the phones start ringing nonstop, we'll be right here to bring you every detail, every rumor, every development in real time. And there's more. We're preparing an exclusive special for when the first major trade goes down. Full analysis, live reaction, detailed tactical breakdown. We'll bring in special guests who know these players personally to give you insights you won't find anywhere else. Because the Leafs revolution could start at any moment. And when it does, when Brad Treliving finally pulls the trigger on the trade that could change everything, we'll be here to tell you the parts nobody else will, to break it all down like no one else does, to celebrate or mourn right alongside you, because we're all part of this blue and white family. Leave a like if you believe this could finally be the summer of change. Subscribe if you want to be part of this historic journey. And share this video with every Leafs fan you know. Because the more united we are, the louder our voice will be as we demand excellence from this organization. And don't forget, in the comments, I want to know which of these 5 players you think would be the game changer the Leafs need. Let's make this comment section the biggest debate this channel has ever seen about the future of the Leafs. Your opinion matters. Your passion matters. And together, we'll follow every step of this saga that could define the destiny of our beloved team. Until the next video, keep the faith, keep dreaming, and remember, one day, our Stanley Cup will come. The question is whether Brad Treliving has the courage to make the changes needed for it to happen now, or whether we'll have to wait yet another generation.